So just so you guys know some background, Ameer, chef of Epic Mealtime. Before Epic Mealtime, I'll let him discuss it a little bit, but he loved Resident Evil. He loved Resident Evil games, and I was never good at them. I never figured them out until the fourth one. Before that, those games were I was just not that gamer at all. Before we dive right into the Resident Evil aspect, maybe, Ameer, let's touch upon who you are as a gamer. You used to live in Oklahoma, right?
Yeah, I used to live in Oklahoma. I mean, born in Canada, then moved to Oklahoma, then now I'm back in Canada. So,
tell me about your radio experience.
yeah. To be honest, when I was big into video games, Gears of War was coming out on the Xbox 360. It was coming on Xbox 360, and I was so passionate about that game. Like when I saw the early trailers, early gameplay, I was so convinced that was the best looking game on the planet, in the world. And I just was a big fan of the radio station Wild 97.9, which I believe now is Wild 104.9. Not quite sure, haven't really kept up on that.
Whatever.
But I made it my goal to tell them, like, listen, this game, Gears of War, is coming out and it's going to be the biggest deal. Like, this is a huge game. Like, I've never seen anything like it. And I told them, you got to say something. You got to talk about it. It's just a topic of conversation. And one of the hosts was like, hey, we honestly don't know anything about the game.
They weren't gamers at all, your co-hosts.
Casual. Very casual. Very casual gamers. So they said, we don't know anything about the game, so why don't you just call us up and just tell us what it's about, and you could just describe it. And I said, I'd be honored to. So
They gave you free reign like that?
Yeah, of course, no swearing. Don't.
You didn't swear much, anyways. You don't have like a sweary type vibe.
No.
You say some insane things.
Yeah.
But you never really swear. By the way, guys, when I say insane things, one time Ameer was arguing with Dave. Dave from Epic Mealtime back in the day, all in good fun, but he was arguing with him, and he was like, Dave, I will turn your wife into a puddle. I will turn your wife into a puddle. So that's a pretty messed up thing to say, but then again, there's no swearing in that sentence.
No, it's just, it's a puddle.
Yeah, turning someone into a puddle is a big deal, though. So yeah, they let you get free reign, and what'd you do? You just went on the radio and you were like, yo, get it with it, Gears of War, this is gonna light up your blue.
I would have even find that, but yeah, I just pretty much gave a description of the game, what kind of game it is, third-person shooter, covers-based system, and just tried to really hype it up. And ever since after that, they said, hey, that was pretty cool, why don't we just keep doing that every week? So after I was able to do it for a couple of years, 2 years, just beyond.
Even when you came back to Montreal, I remember you getting phone calls at like 7 a.m. We'd be like so cracked out, like killing it all night, and then you'd be like, oh yeah, I'm getting a call, I gotta get a call, I gotta get to a phone. Because I have to call the radio station in an hour.
Yeah, and I just was able to provide a weekly dose of video game knowledge, and it had its own segment, Ameer Atari video game expert.
Which is what I ended up calling you for a long time.
Yeah.
I called him Ameer Atari video game expert for a long time. And it's funny because you did all that hyping up for Gears of War, and then Gears of War ended up having probably the hypest marketing behind it regardless. True. With that Mad World commercial. After that commercial aired, did your other radio hosts, were they like, oh, I saw that game you were talking about on the TV?
Yeah, one of them, one of the producers, Nugget, he came in and picked up Gears of War. Like, he got on the...
Oh, really? His name was Nugget?
Yeah, his name was Nugget.
I promise you, a guy named Nugget loves Gears of War, for sure. For sure. Just Nugget just seems like the type of guy that'll be like, oh, I want it, bro. It's got a chainsaw attached to the gun. But enough of that bloodbath. Let's jump back into another bloodbath. What was your first Resident Evil? What was your first Resident Evil experience?
First Resident Evil experience was on the PlayStation 1. Like, when the PlayStation 1 was first coming out, Virgin console.
When it was called the PSX.
Yeah. When I was at the Virgin console, I was at a CompuCentre. You remember CompuCentre back in the day at like Fairview? And I was there, and it was between the Sega Saturn or the PSX, the PlayStation.
Oof,
the PlayStation.
That was your choice. You could have made a grave error that day.
So I went with the PlayStation, and it came. My mom only was going to buy me one game, and I had Alien Trilogy in one hand, and I had Resident Evil in the other hand.
Wow, Resident Evil beat out Alien. You made the right choice.
The cover of Resident Evil back in the day had Chris Redfield. His face was like all mangled.
Not even Chris Redfield. He's insane. He's like turning into a zombie on the cover almost.
You remember that cover.
I don't know what they were doing. Guys, this is back in the day. I can't explain it. PSX games back in the day. The covers were like the size of a DVD box, but it was like 90% cardboard with like a plastic ridge on one side. And they were tall, right? Taller than DVDs.
Yeah.
It was like a big ass box.
And
he's on the cover with like an eye popping out.
Yeah, exactly. And he has a big shotgun and there's like a spider in the background. And I was just like, okay, this is it. This is the one. So I went with it.
He kind of looks like Bruce Campbell a bit. Evil Dead. It's got that kind of that vibe now that I'm thinking about it. It doesn't look like Chris. He's like yelling. He's got an eye falling out, it looks like. He's blasting. I wonder if that was the Japanese cover. But anyway, so you picked up that one.
Yeah, so Resident Evil was my first game on PlayStation and the first Resident Evil I ever played. And boy, I'll tell you, I went right back home, plugged it in, started playing it, and I was immediately scared out of my mind. Like, I've never played a game like that before. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Its level of challenge was pretty intimidating.
To be fair, you probably made it harder for yourself by choosing the guy on the cover of the box.
I actually chose the girl.
You chose? Who's the girl?
Jill Valentine.
Jill Valentine.
Jill Valentine because
just saying Jill Valentine. Don't you just get some goosebumps? Like Jill Valentine.
It's a real iconic.
It is. You know what we really need to do on Epic Mealtime? I just realized we need to make a Jill sandwich.
That's a good one.
Wouldn't that be good?
Because that is a throwback to Resident Evil 1, where she's about to get crushed in the...
Why'd you choose Jill Valentine? Why would you... And I'm not saying that, like, and to everyone at home, like, you have to understand something. In this day and age, people value female representation to a T. They really do. But when I grew up, like, I loved Ripley. I loved Sarah Connor. I never realized there was an issue for these types of things. But when I had the choice in a video game, I wanted to kind of fancy myself as the main protagonist. So I would choose the male if given the choice most of the time. I chose Chris, which makes it harder for you. What are the advantages when you choose Jill in that game?
Jill starts with a gun.
That's a huge advantage.
And she is the master of unlocking. So a lot of doors in the mansion that were locked needed a lockpick. Jill starts with a lockpick. So that made a lot of things easier.
So that's like, that means what are some things, could you get like a shotgun? Or whatever with the lockpick? What do you get with that lockpick?
Yeah,
many items, health and stuff.
There's some doors, straight up doors, required lockpicks to open. Some cases needed a lockpick to open, and it's just Chris had to struggle and get the key. They were called small keys. You just had to find a small key, and the small keys were able to unlock the doors that Jill did not need for lockpick.
Do you get big keys in that game?
Yeah, you do get the mansion keys, but not only that, it's just the fact that if you wanted to carry a small key with you, that would take up an inventory space, where Jill, the lockpick, went into a special item where Chris's lighter was. So Chris had a lighter, Jill had a lockpick.
What does a lighter do for you, though?
Lighter, you were able to light candles, torches. They were able to reveal maps. Some puzzles did require you to light them and set them on fire.
But what, you have, what, like 6 inventory spaces in this game?
You do start the game with a 6 inventory slot, but I believe there was a side pack that, yes, there was a side pack that does add an additional 8 inventory, because the shotgun itself is 2 inventory slots. So
yeah. So like my experience of Resident Evil was, I got it on PlayStation. I remember choosing Jill. I remember walking down, making a left in the mansion, going past the dining room table, going into that room and seeing a zombie there, and missing about 80% of the shots that I took at the zombie. Because you could either aim straight, 45 degrees down, or 45 degrees up. So the only way to get the headshot is you have to get them just within like grabbing range of you, and then pull the trigger, and you would be able to shoot them, right? Is that, if I remember correctly?
That is 100% correct.
And I remember just blowing through all my ammo.
Not a thing you do in a Resident Evil game.
No, and then on this first zombie, and still getting killed a bunch, you know, like having no health. Now I'm holding my like stomach. I have no ammo, and this was the first bad guy.
Yeah.
And then I remember, I think you go down that hallway, and I think you encounter another zombie, or one shortly thereafter. And I remember being like, why would this game give me another, like, it felt like a boss battle already. I'm like, what is this? And I remember the time I stopped playing the game.
Yes, that happened to me too at one point.
What part?
I got stuck. I had no idea what to do. Like, I was constantly moving forward, unlocking more portions of the mansion. And then as every door was locked, I never thought to myself, oh, I gotta backtrack. And by backtracking, it activated the game and the game came back alive. It's a part where you go all the way into a courtyard with the moon puzzle. You have to create the two moons.
I kind of remember that.
And then when you go back to the mansion, it goes into a cutscene and it's a new enemy coming at you right away. And when that happened, I said, oh my God, something's happening. It was that. I had to backtrack. And then when I backtracked and that hunter came through the doorway, this green reptile looking thing, I swear to God, I just shut the system off. I got scared. I said, no, never again. No more.
These are the alpha hunters, right?
Yeah, they're the green 3 claws. They jump in there. They could decapitate you. They could instantly kill you.
These were different enemies. Did you ever play it on Sega? What was it? Sega. What was that last Sega one? The good one. Dreamcast.
Yeah, it was Resident Evil Code Veronica.
Dreamcast also made a port of Resident Evil 1, didn't they?
That was on GameCube, I believe.
Was it? I remember reading about how those enemies were different on the port, where they looked like ticks with big blades at that. They changed that enemy in the port for some reason. Completely unimportant entirely. But I remember abandoning the game when I went down the hallway and the dogs jumped through.
Ooh.
I was like, I don't need this in my life.
Right?
I was like, at that point, I tried it much later than you. So I had other options of games to play. And I remember just being like, no, we're done with this now.
No.
This is not the kind of game I have. I'm like, you need to be like some 20-year-old genius. At the time, I must have been 12, 13, 14 years old. No more than 14.
And especially a game that like had inventory control, saving.
Oh my God, that was so unfair to the young gamer.
Yeah.
So in Resident Evil, and it's still something they got going these days,
Very
but
true.
never as much as hard as it was back then, was you needed to keep ink ribbons to save the game. You had to use a ribbon to save the game. So you would have to use one slot that could have been a health pack, but instead it's to save your progress. Right? They were still inventory.
And if you didn't save your progress,
game over. Back to the main screen.
Could be back to the main screen or your previously last save. So
could be hours back.
Yeah, that's happened. That has happened, especially if you're trying to go for like one of the S rankings. No.